Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, a pleasure to be with you again. And, Michael, have you noticed how Americans seem to love conspiracy theories? Wow, they are everywhere you turn. Most recently, of course, the Kennedy conspiracies. The list is endless. We could spend a whole hour just listing them. Well, conspiracies go back to the first one, a possible assassination of George Washington. Brad Meltzer will join us in just a few moments. Stay put. The Florida Roundtable begins in a moment.
Do you remember a time when God intervened in an impossible situation and blessed you in a time of crisis? The disciples had seen Jesus miraculously feed 5,000 with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Then that very night they found themselves in a storm and quickly forgot that great miracle. We tend to have short memories when it comes to crisis, and it's easy to forget God's past faithfulness when new obstacles arise. Jesus told his disciples to expect challenges. Don't be surprised when trials appear. It's just a part of life. When things are going wrong, Jesus says to us, stop, remember, look back to the miraculous power of God. Look back to how God has blessed you in the past as you face big challenges today. Look back to move forward. This is Bryant Wright, speaking right from my heart.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org and click Devotions to read the daily devotion and send to a friend.
An opioid overdose does not need to end in tragedy. At-home rescue treatments like naloxone can help you save a life. Naloxone is available without a prescription and doesn't need to be administered by a health professional. Learn to recognize the signs of an overdose, like unresponsiveness, snoring sounds, and shallow breathing during an emergency. To learn more, dial pound 250 on your cell phone, say the keyword Save a Life, and you will have the option to receive a one-time auto-dial text message from iHeartMedia. Brought to you by the Florida Department of Children and Families. Standard message and data rates apply.
Hey y'all, it's Bubba and Cooter. At Gatorland, there's more gators, more animals, and more fun than ever before. Visit with our 4 giant white gators and our white gator swamp. Plus bobcats and Florida Panthers. Not to mention great shows like the world-famous Gator Jumperoo Show. And don't forget your swim trunks for the Gator Gully Splash Park. And Florida residents get in for only $14.99 with a valid Florida ID now through the end of December. For more information, call 407-855-5496 or go to Gatorland.com.
This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and we are proud as punch today that we're going to have author, historian, South Florida resident Brad Meltzer back with us to talk about his brand new book, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. Who could possibly want to kill George Washington?
Right.
Wow. I mean, gee whiz. Well, guess what? There were a lot of them out there, and it was a big plot. And we don't want to give too much of it away right now, but we're going to let Brad tell you about this. He's made this thing into a whole book, along with Josh Mensch, and it really is, Michael has said it to me, it is a page-turner.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this interview for weeks now because I enjoyed the book so much.
And it is factual. Brad is known for 20 years for his thrillers that had threads of historical truth in them, but this one is based on the truth. There's no shilly-shally and flim-flam in this one.
Although it's written kind of like a thriller where you just keep wanting to read.
Well, he's
suspenseful.
He's translated. He's managed to transmit or translate his ability to hold your interest and make it thrilling into real living history.
Yeah,
and that is a gift that Brad has had. But conspiracies and Americans, we love them. For many, many years, just a couple of quick examples here for you, and you may have one too. I go back to President Zachary Taylor, our 12th president, living in Louisiana at the time, a successful general, very independent-minded, thought he was going to be maybe like John Adams or John Quincy Adams. But the Southerners, and this is a time when North and South are beginning to be feeling this slave issue, and the North doesn't trust the South, and the South is afraid they're going to do away. And they think with Zachary Taylor, the Southerner, in the White House, that everything's going to be safe. They're fine. He's a slave owner.
Yeah.
Huh? Well, it turns out he doesn't back them on these things. And on the 4th of July, in 1850, he attends the cornerstone laying of the Washington Monument. And it's a hot day in Washington, almost like a Florida summer day.
Yeah.
And after the dedication ceremony, he drinks a lot of very cold milk and eats raw vegetables and strawberries. And guess what? A few days later, he's dead.
Unbelievable.
Well, the verdict was he had died of gastroenteritis from eating these bad vegetables and drinking the cold milk
Right.
and all this heat. And but the conspiracy grew for years that Southerners had him killed because
Really?
he wasn't coming down on their side. They poisoned him.
Amazing. I have not heard about this one.
This built, you ready? This gets better. This went on for 120 years.
Yeah.
We get into the middle 1970s, where the family actually allows the body of Zachary Taylor to be exhumed. Modern medicine is going to open up his remains and settle this argument whether the Southerners poisoned him because of his stands on slavery, like they've been charging for 120 years. And guess what they found?
It was what they originally said. Just
He died of gastroenteritis.
Yep. Wow.
So much for that conspiracy.
It's almost like conspiracies like that are part of, conspiracy theories are just a part of American history, you know?
It took 120 years to put that one to bed, you know? And
That's amazing.
We still have a lot of them floating around about Abraham Lincoln that will never be proved one way or another. And
of course, there's JFK.
John Kennedy, yes. And on it goes. But I thought I would share that. That Zachary Taylor one isn't generally well known, unless you happen to be around in the mid-1970s when they actually
That's fascinating,
solved this thing. So, but Brad Meltzer has, spent a long time here studying this conspiracy to kill George Washington, and it's a marvelous book, and he's going to kind of tease us with it. So we'll invite you to stay put. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Brad Meltzer and the Florida Roundtable will continue in a moment.
For families facing the challenge of a loved one with an opioid use disorder, it's important to know that shallow breathing, snoring, or gurgling sounds and unresponsiveness can be signs of an overdose. In the event of an emergency, an at-home treatment like naloxone can help save a life. To learn more, dial pound 250 on your cell phone and say the key words "save a life." You will have the option to receive a one-time auto-dialed text message from iHeartMedia. Brought to you by the Florida Department of Children and Families. Standard message and data rates apply.
Hey y'all, it's Bubba and Cooter. At Gatorland, there's more gators, more animals, and more fun than ever before. Visit with our 4 giant white gators and our white gator swamp. Plus bobcats and Florida Panthers. Not to mention great shows like the world-famous Gator Jumperoo Show. And don't forget your swim trunks for the Gator Gully Splash Park. And Florida residents get in for only $14.99 with a valid Florida ID now through the end of December. For more information, call 407-855-5496 or go to Gatorland.com.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Wow, your flowers are gorgeous. What's your secret?
It's no secret. It's Bear Advanced.
You mean these blue bottles?
Uh-huh. I protect my beauties with all-in-one rose and flower care. It's insect and disease control plus fertilizer.
Really? What's this 12-month tree and shrub protect and feed?
Oh, I use it on my trees. It kills bugs for up to a year, plus it feeds. It's that easy. Hey, where are you going?
To get my own. I want a great yard, too.
Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. Always read and follow label instructions.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And Michael, as promised, we are off to South Florida. We are joined by a gentleman who's become a great friend of this program, one of our favorite authors and historians here in the state of Florida, and I think that the state of Florida ought to be proud to be able to claim his residency along with his family. And I'm talking about none other than our good buddy, Brad Meltzer. And Brad, welcome back to the Florida Roundtable.
Thank you, my friend. I feel like this is one of the interviews where it's like coming home.
Well, that's a good feeling, and we thank you for that. For those of you who may not be familiar with Brad, my goodness, he has spent 20 years. He's written best-selling thrillers. Ordinary People Change the World. He was the host of the History Channel TV shows Brad Meltzer's Decoded and Brad Meltzer's Lost History. He used that to help find the missing 9/11 flag that, you remember, the firefighters raised at Ground Zero. He's got a brand new TV series coming out for PBS in the fall of 2019. All kinds of good things. But most importantly, and the reason for our visit today, is that after 20 years of writing these thrilling bestsellers, Brad has got a nonfiction book out called The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. Now, before we get into all that, I must say, Brad, that even in the thrillers that you have put out, there was always a thread of some historical truth to them. Whether it was coming from George Washington, you became great friends with the family of George and Barbara Bush, and listen to me ramble on here, but I want you to talk about writing those the historical threads that you put into the thrillers, and did that help you or encourage you to want to write a nonfiction book?
Yeah, no, and listen, that's actually the perfect place to start because that's where this one began. I found this story, and we'll talk about it in a moment, but in the best place where you can find any kind of crazy detail that you want to know more about, which is in the footnotes of all places. And I was going through the footnotes, and I found this detail, that there was a plot to kill George Washington. And I thought, what? That can't be true. Is it real? Is it something on the internet? What is it? And I couldn't shake it. I was trying to figure it out. I actually put it in one of my thrillers, one that we spoke about many years ago called The President's Shadow. And you can see on a paragraph on one of the pages in the middle of this fictional book is this mention of a plot to kill George Washington. What I didn't say then is I couldn't shake the idea. And I just kept wondering, is it real? And I went and found out it was real. It actually, when George Washington found out that there was a plot to kill him, he rounded up those responsible. One of them was his own personal bodyguards, and he hung them in front of 20,000 people. Reagan, it was the largest execution at that point in North American history. George Washington brought the hammer down. He said, "Do not mess with me. I'm George Washington. I'm going to be on the money one day," right? He was just not playing around. And that's obviously not a direct quote. I'm kind of embellishing there, but the story was true. And I just thought, I got to find out more about it. And I went to, at the time, a couple of years ago, I went to Joseph Ellis, one of the Pulitzer Prize-winning biographers who's done a George Washington biography. And I said, do you know about the story, the plot to kill George Washington? And he said, I've heard about it. He said, but here's going to be the hard part of tracking it down. He said that if you want to know about George Washington's, how many slaves he owns, you can find out every detail. But this is a story that involves his spies and his spy network as they thwarted the plan to kill him. So what you're looking for, you'll never find all his spies, he said. What you're looking for will forever be elusive. But he said, if you look and you find, you're going to have an amazing story. And thankfully, we now have this new book. It is called, as you know, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. And the whole book came from there, me trying to fill up and finding my first nonfiction story.
Yeah, you're known for writing these thrillers, but you're also known for writing these children's books, and one of them is I Am George Washington. So you obviously have a lot of respect for George Washington. When you were researching for this book, did you find out new things that just made you love and respect him even more?
Of course. And listen, you know me well enough to know that's exactly, I did a book where, my thrillers take place in the Culper Ring, George Washington's private spy ring, in a fictional setting. Then I did, as you said, a kid's book, I Am George Washington. Here we are with the first conspiracy, the secret plot to kill George Washington. It's not a really tough code to crack of my love for this man. But yeah, no, of course, to dig you deep in any subject, you find new things. And in this case, I think one of my favorite things was simply, we are a country, we revere George Washington. We know him, we recognize him, he's on the money, but we oddly know nothing about him. As a person, we know very little about him. He's not like John Adams or Jefferson, who put all their thoughts and feelings into their letters. His letters were just kind of cold and calculated and all business. And we are a country that loves our legends and myths. We're a country founded on our legends and myths. And the legends and myths we love the most are our own. So we love the story of, here's the Revolutionary War, and here comes George Washington, and we all come together and we take on this British enemy, and we all hold hands, and rainbows come, and we win. And it's a wonderful story, a beautiful story. It doesn't mean it's the true story. And when I was digging into the first conspiracy, one of the things that really struck me was just how divided we were as a country. We like to think of the British are over there, and we're over here, and they came here and we fought them, and then they went back home. But the reality is, especially in New York, where most of the book takes place, there were loyalists on the British side everywhere. They were your neighbors. They were your friends. They all lived here. And they were constantly switching sides. Everyone was switching sides depending on who was winning. But the moment that I really was struck by George Washington is what he did in the face of that. Because he fought, we have leaders today who wrap themselves in the flag. Back then there was no flag. There were no United States of America. George Washington helped build them. And watching him build them was humbling, because one of my favorite stories in there is this one. It's the Battle of Brooklyn in New York, one of the first big battles of the war here. And the British are obviously invaded. And we're getting our butts kicked. We're not some unified fighting force. We get outfought. George Washington gets out-generaled. He doesn't have the experience that the British generals have. And we're pinned down against the East River. We're trapped. That's it. This is the end. We're going to die. And George Washington in that moment anyone could say, let's just fight as hard as we can. We'll take out as many as we can. We'll go out in a blaze of glory. Very macho, very, beat your chest, kind of like leaders today who beat their chest we want to look at and say, look at me, look at me. And instead, George Washington does that amazing thing he always does. He adapts. He basically says, no, forget that. We're going to do a daring escape. We're not going to go kill everybody. We're going to have a daring escape. And in the middle of the night, he organizes an escape. He gets these boats to come on the East River secretly and puts all of his men aboard. But what his men start to see is that he won't get on any of the ships until all of his men are on first, even the low-ranking ones. And they see him putting his life, really their lives above his life. And that's how George Washington unifies us. We're a country today divided. And I think, George Washington's lessons are ones we can all use today, whatever your political side.
This conspiracy goes back to some of the earliest days, not the earliest days, but the early period of the war when the British are occupying New York City and a good chunk of New York, and George Washington is there. But some of the key players, and this is where I learned a few things from you as well, traitorous people, soldiers. But it doesn't stop there. We want to include the governor of New York and the mayor of New York City, something that today people would find absolutely incredulous.
Right? I mean, let's talk about who the villains are in this book. And, you hit it right on the head. These aren't just some scrubs. This is the governor of New York. The mayor of New York are starting this plot. They're the ones in power. They have an entire network of people they reach out to. And let's not forget, which was so striking to me, is they reach all the way to George Washington's private bodyguards. And it's one of my favorite details. I did not know about this group until I started researching the first conspiracy. But one of the things that was amazing is George Washington asked all of his regiments, he said, give me 4 of your best men. He wanted what they call drilled men, the best of the best. And then from there, he culled the top 50 or so. And these were the ones who they had different names. They were called the president's bodyguards. They were called the guard. But eventually the name that they settled on was the lifeguards, because they guarded George Washington's life. They guarded his papers. They guarded, obviously, the money of the Patriot side, but they guarded George Washington's life, his private bodyguards. And the governor of New York and the mayor of New York got them to switch sides too. And I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how manly you are. I don't care who you are. Even George Washington at that moment, it is a betrayal of the highest order. And it's just, I don't want to ruin the whole book, but when you see how it plays out, it's, you realize how quickly history could have easily gone the other way.
Yeah, when you talk about how quickly history could have easily gone the other way, you talked about earlier the daring escape. When you're reading this book, it almost seems like some of these events are miraculous. Like there's divine providence, like George Washington used to say. Did you feel that way when you were reading through the history?
I mean, how could you not? I mean, one of the great moments, and again, I don't want to ruin it, but the way that, the plot is found out, and we should talk about, maybe in one of the next segments we'll talk about the secret committees that researched it, but one of the things that struck me when they were looking for him, trying to figure it out, is it hinges on 2 guys secretly whispering in a jail cell. The entire history of the country, right? The whole plot against George Washington hinges on 2 guys whispering to each other and one of them not realizing the other was a spy. And but for that moment, maybe we never find out about it. Maybe George Washington is killed, and all of history changes. And you just feel like, whatever you believe in, whether George Washington, as you called it, providence or God or fate or whatever it might be, you feel like sometimes you got to listen to the universe. And in that moment, the universe is certainly saying something.
I tell you what, Brad, we are at that point already where we need to take a little bit of a pause along our network line here. We want to remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
A very special guest this day is Brad Meltzer, one of our favorite historians and authors from South Florida. Proud to have him as a Florida resident. His brand new book, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. Yes, you heard me right, and he's documented this whole thing. It is totally nonfiction. It is from Flatiron Books. You can find details of it on Amazon.com or check in at any of the fine bookstores all around Florida to pick up a copy of this thing. We invite you to stay put. Our conversation continues following these messages.
It's happening to you every night. One snores, and the other can't sleep. It seems like there's no end to it. But now there's a quick and easy-to-use solution, a natural solution. Snore Stop. Try it risk-free today. Snore Stop was created and tested by a team of physicians and has been helping couples sleep for over 20 years. It is the #1 selling anti-snoring medicine in the U.S. Snore Stop sprays or tablets are now available nationwide. All you have to do is call. It's time to try Snore Stop and make every night a better night for both of you. Don't wait. Try Snore Stop, the #1 selling anti-snoring medicine in the U.S. spray or tablets. Call right now for free shipping and your 100% risk-free trial offer. 800-960-4918. 800-960-4918. 800-960-4918. That's 800-960-4918.
Florida's boating environment is always changing. New sunsets, new experiences that you won't find anywhere else on Earth. But one thing that never changes: boating while impaired by drugs or alcohol. It's illegal in the state of Florida. Boating under the influence will land you in jail, or worse, kill someone you love. It's just simply not a risk worth taking. Learn more about Florida's boating laws at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the FWC Division of Law Enforcement.
Your yard's days of being picked on are over, thanks to the science of Bear Advanced Brush Killer Plus. Its penetrating formula is specifically designed to kill hard-to-control brush, like kudzu, poison ivy, poison oak, and wild berries, roots and all. And the concentrate product even kills stumps, so your yard never has to worry about being bullied. Bear Advanced. Get more from the blue bottle. BearAdvanced.com. Always read and follow label directions.
Terrorist acts and shootings are often described as great tragedies. They are not. We live in a world so concerned with being politically correct that they're afraid to call evil what it is, evil. Man's sin nature is as old as the Garden of Eden. Many love to blame culture, poverty, or lack of education and opportunity as the problem. They may have a good or bad impact, but the big problem is sin. Acknowledging our sin nature will show us our need for a Savior who changes us from within. That Savior's name is Jesus. He came to die for the sins of all who will acknowledge their sin. Faith in Him strikes a mighty blow at evil. So quit calling man's evil acts a tragedy. They are evil and God hates it. Yet thankfully He loves us in spite of our evil and sin. Jesus not only forgives us, but gives us the want to overcome evil with good. This is Brian Wright, speaking right from my heart.
All right, crew, let's get her dug.
Honey, you want to give me a hand? I'm planting that tree, remember?
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 business days before any digging project, so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. This includes natural gas and petroleum pipelines, electric, communication cables, and water and sewer lines. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811. Brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And we are delighted this day to have as our special guest Brad Meltzer. He is a PBS host extraordinaire, author, historian, and South Florida resident with his family. His brand new book, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington, from our friends at Flatiron Books. You can check it out on Amazon.com or ask at any of the fine bookstores all around this great state of Florida. This is one that you're really going to want. It's a true mystery that very few Americans know. And Brad, I must say, your voice in this thing just beckons to be heard. And Mike and I had talked about it before you joined us, that Americans have this love of conspiracy theories, and we delve into them almost constantly. But one of the things that got me to thinking and makes it difficult, you were talking about two guys whispering and one of them realizing that we got a big deal going on here. George Washington's day. This might not have been an easy thing to break. I mean, you can't ping somebody's phone off of a cell tower. You can't get their phone records. None of this electronic falderall that we go through today while the police are tracking people down. This wasn't easy to crack.
And that's exactly right. One of the things that really struck me as we were researching the first conspiracy was we like to think of the OSS as the precursor to the CIA. You know, you have the CIA, before that you have the OSS, and that's where counterintelligence comes from. Counterintelligence as a word wasn't even invented until World War II. It just didn't exist. But when you really look back at the heart of the Revolutionary War, one of the things that really struck us as we were researching this book is that George Washington is actually the precursor to all of it. And this plot is the precursor to all of it. Because what happens is the New York Provincial Congress back then creates a secret committee. Their committee is called, they have a great name for it eventually if they settle on the name, the Committee on Conspiracies. And their job is to find out and look for all these people plotting against us in the United States. All the spies and the networks of traitors who are trying to kill us, who are trying to take down the Patriot cause, who are working for the king from the inside. That's who they put in charge of looking for it. And it's really eventually a 3-committee team led by John Jay. And history lovers will recognize the name of John Jay. He's the first Supreme Court justice. But one of the things that was so amazing is that John Jay wasn't just a legal scholar. He was an incredible intelligence officer. He was really our first intelligence officer, and it was under his charge where he used all those techniques that the CIA and the OSS and everyone else uses today, which is interrogation and making sure you do good investigative work and following up on leads and talking and turning criminals and bringing people on your side and flipping them. And this all started in 1776. And they didn't have the word counterintelligence, but make no mistake, they were building a counterintelligence agency. The Committee on Conspiracies only grew after that, after the success of stopping the plot to kill George Washington. And you can see that, one of the things, the first conspiracy, when we originally titled the book, it was called The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington and the Birth of American Counterintelligence. Now, cooler heads prevailed and realized that was too long a title, and everyone really liked the plot to kill George Washington part. But as you know, both of you know from reading the book, one of the major parts of the last quarter of the book is how they cracked the code here. And I truly mean that, not just metaphorically. There's points where secret letters come in, and they're written in code. And George Washington looks around and says, we have any code breakers? And they don't even have any. There are none. The army's just forming. So they quickly send to Boston and get code breakers from Boston, but they're slowly realizing that if we want to fight the enemy here, we need to put in place an entire team who can do it.
One thing I really found interesting in the book is you talk a lot about not just the leaders of the Continental Army or the Continental Congress, but the average person, the average soldier in the Army or the average citizen in New York. And you revealed that a lot of people were split on which side to go on, which side to root for. And isn't that the reason why we needed a lot of the counterintelligence, because anyone could be a spy?
That's exactly right. One of the things that is so it's unnerving, at least to me, it was unnerving as I researched it, is to kind of get that better holistic view of the average person back then during the Revolution. Because, again, today we like to make it hero versus villain, right? They're the bad guys, we're the good guys, we win. And you see, and again, full credit to Josh Mentz, who I worked on this book with, and, one of the co-writer of this book with me. He has an obsession with little details. So he found that, he found everything from, the percentage of people in New York that were on each side at the time, but even going down to what were they like, and realizing that, they were drinking at a level 5 times the strength of what we drink today when we drink, gin and we drink rum. That theirs was, prostitution was rampant in New York at the time because there was no internet, there was no Netflix, there was no television to go, fiddle away your time. So the men there, as the Army came into New York, needed other things to do, and drinking and prostitution were actually a major part of those things. That was the entertainment of the time. And you start getting a much fuller, realistic picture of what it looks like. And I think the scariest one is the one you mentioned, which is how many people were switching sides. And why? For the most logical reasons of all, because they're human. Because you know what? George Washington's army sounds good now because we know we won, but back then they didn't have shoes. They barely had guns. There was no gunpowder. They were running out of that. They looked like they were going to get slaughtered. And you know what happens? And then on top of that, a lot of them aren't getting paid because military money isn't coming in at the time. So guess what happens when you don't pay people and you don't give them shoes and you don't give them guns and they're fighting your war? They immediately go, hey, wait a minute. I don't want to lose. I want to win. Let's see what the other side has to offer. So when a British military intelligence officer comes down and says, hey, you want to make some money and switching sides and tell us what the plans are of your side and we can take care of you when we win and slaughter you all, that seems like a pretty good deal. And I think one of the scariest things is realizing how many people here, not over there, had switched sides and were working for the British, that we needed this entire intelligence movement to deal with this issue.
And I come back to this again. Partly at the center of this thing, you have the mayor of New York City who is confined to a boat, but yet people are getting in and out to see him, and the money is flowing, and he is offering all sorts of money for people to come on over and stay loyal to the king.
Yeah, let's talk about Governor William Tryon. So the governor of New York at the time, you know, it's under British rule. The governor of New York is a British appointee. He's someone who works for the king. And then here comes George Washington and the Patriot movement, who say, no, you're not in charge. We got our own governor in charge now. And they actually basically run him out of town. He escapes, worried he's going to be killed. And as you said, he goes aboard his own boat. This thing called the Duchess of Gordon was the name of his boat. And his boat wasn't some, weapon-filled, death machine. It was a smaller boat, but it was next to one of the biggest boats. And on top of that, we, as the Americans at the time, had no navy. We didn't have boats. We could barely even have guns. And so he was, when you were on board your boat, it was neutral territory. He was completely safe. So here's this guy kicked out of his home, kicked out of his actual house. He's lost his job, and now he's trapped on this boat that he can't leave, because if he leaves, we're going to arrest him. So he's trapped on this boat for the better part of a year, and he's angry. He's pissed off. And all he's doing is trying to figure out how to get rid of this guy who's at the center of it all, their leader, a guy named George Washington. In fact, on the day that George Washington comes to New York for the first time as the leader of the Continental Army, it is the same day that Governor Tryon also returns from England and returns to New York. And he thinks there's going to be a big victory parade for him. But instead, everyone's cheering this guy, George Washington. I mean, again, talk about the providence in that moment. These two guys returned to New York on the very same day, on opposite sides, mortal enemies, not even seeing each other. And in that crowd that's cheering for George Washington are people like Alexander Hamilton. And it's an amazing moment. That's one of the early scenes in the book. But you see these two men on what's clearly a collision course.
Brad, once again, we're at that point where we need to take a little bit of a break along our network line here. We want to remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is best-selling author Brad Meltzer. He is visiting from South Florida, where he has resided these many years. His latest effort, his first nonfiction book, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. It is from Flatiron Books. It is available at Amazon.com and all of the fine bookstores all around the state of Florida. It's an eye-opening story, and especially in this day, and there's a lot of territory we want to cover yet. So if you will stay put, our conversation continues following these messages.
An opioid overdose does not need to end in tragedy. At-home rescue treatments like naloxone can help you save a life. Naloxone is available without a prescription and doesn't need to be administered by a health professional. Learn to recognize the signs of an overdose, like unresponsiveness, snoring sounds, and shallow breathing during an emergency. To learn more, dial pound 250 on your cell phone, say the keyword Save a Life, and you will have the option to receive a one-time auto-dial text message from iHeartMedia. Brought to you by the Florida Department of Children and Families. Standard message and data rates apply.
Hey y'all, it's Bubba and Cooter. At Gatorland, there's more gators, more animals, and more fun than ever before. Visit with our 4 giant white gators and our white gator swamp. Plus bobcats and Florida Panthers. Not to mention great shows like the world-famous Gator Jumperoo Show. And don't forget your swim trunks for the Gator Gully Splash Park. And Florida residents get in for only $14.99 with a valid Florida ID now through the end of December. For more information, call 407-855-5496 or go to Gatorland.com.
Where do you want to go on a vacation or honeymoon? The Caribbean, Europe, Hawaii, Mexico? How about Disney or a cruise? At Superior Cruise and Travel, we've got you covered. We'll assign you your own travel concierge. They'll help you design a custom vacation plan that you can't find online. And the service is completely free. You can't compare the value of this to any other online travel company. We can help you plan a custom vacation anywhere in the world. We even offer payment plans with no credit card required. Now you pay off your vacation on your time schedule. Call now and mention the promo code RADIO and save up to $500. Book your custom trip. Call Superior Cruise and Travel now and talk to one of the highest-rated travel agencies in the country with a 5-star A+ online rating.
800-659-5087. 800-659-5087. 800-659-5087. That's 800-659-5087.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is Brad Meltzer, one of Florida's finest authors, a resident of South Florida with his family. For 20 years, he's been writing thrillers, and now he is out with his first nonfiction book, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. It's from our friends at Flatiron Books. You can find it at Amazon.com. You can go to any of the fine bookstores all over the state, and if they don't have it, ask them to get it for you. They can do that. You know, it's not hard to order these things. But Brad, well, let me say thank you for spending all this time with us today. We know that you're very busy with the book and all those things, and we always look forward to having you with us. It's always great fun, and Mike and I always come away from this learning something. And but this plot to kill George Washington, they arrest the guilty parties, and Washington pulls together 20,000 troops and citizens in an open field to hang one of the conspirators. Everybody sees it. The largest public execution of its time in all of North America, probably, and I'm thinking it's got to rank as one of the biggest of all time in the whole world. And yet, if you went around Florida today and asked anybody if they knew about it, they probably think you were nuts. They don't know what you're talking about. Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing, you know, you really, what you're asking there is, how do we not know this story, right? I mean, it's, and we should spend a little time talking about that because 20,000 people, as you mentioned, watched this hanging. 20,000 people, the largest public execution at that point in North American history. If 20,000 people watch something, there should be a record of it. Why do we not know the story? And the truth is people know the story. They don't know much about it. But the reason it gets lost to history and gets kind of buried is I want to mention the day that the hanging takes place. It is on Friday, June 28th, 1776. June 28th, 1776. Guess what's happening right around there, right? The first draft of the Declaration comes in and is being read to the Continental Congress for the first time, the second, I should say. And they are debating and looking at the words. At the same time, the British are literally coming. They're basically a week away from invading. And we're going to sign the Declaration in about a week, too. So it's one of the most amazing moments in all of American history, and all these things at the same time is this hanging for 20,000 people. So when you're going to write about that day, guess what historians want to write about? They write about the Declaration. They write about the invasion of the British. Those are the big moments. But what to me was so vitally important was also saying that George Washington rounded together 20,000 people and said, watch me murder this man. Something big had gone down. Something terrible had happened. And again, I just love that we could, in the book, really pull apart the true story and show you what happened behind the scenes.
You know, it's obvious from reading your books and listening to you right now that you have just a real love for history, and especially American history and revolutionary history. What drives that love? What makes you so passionate about this?
That's a good question. I think for me, what the revolution and what George Washington, it was always my favorite. I was a history major in college at the University of Michigan when I left. I grew up here in Florida, and I went and got to go to college and became a history major. And I think for me, even now, the appeal of the revolution is I feel like it represents the best of us. If you ask me what would George Washington think about our culture today and where our state of politics are today, I think he'd be embarrassed. I think he'd look at this country right now. And again, I don't care what your politics are. Whatever side you're on, you hate the other side. You're a Republican, you hate the Democrats. You're a Democrat, you hate the Republicans. We're a country that's deeply, deeply divided. And George Washington willed this country together. There's this moment in the book. One of my favorite stories also is right as, everyone likes to think of us as this unified fighting force, but even our own army was completely divided, hated each other, because the regiments from Connecticut hated the regiments from Massachusetts, hated the regiments from Virginia. In fact, when the Virginians first came to Massachusetts and came into Harvard Yard, the Marbleheads, the Massachusetts regiments, saw that their uniforms were different. Everyone was wearing different uniforms. There was no one army uniform. They were wearing something that was a little more frilly around the neck. They started making fun of it, and a fight breaks out. They're literally ready to kill each other over this. And George Washington gets on his horse, rides into the middle of it, grabs two of the big guys, starts shaking them, throttling them. Stop fighting. You're on the same team. And I love that idea of that we're on the same team. The name of the country is the United States of America. We have forgotten the united part. We have lost the united part. And I think for me, always the appeal of the revolutionary times is that simple idea that together we are better, that together we are stronger, and that idea that, people are fighting for, all men are created equal. It's such a beautiful, idealistic, wonderful idea, and we've lost it. We're getting away from it. And personally, I think, leaders like George Washington represent a reminder of that there's a difference between modern politicians and leaders. We need to get back to leaders. We don't have them anymore. Again, whatever side you're on, we need real leaders who are fighting for something that is bigger than a political party, something that is our United States. And I think that, to me, that's what it represents.
And before we have to part company here in a couple of minutes, Brad, you got pre-publication reviews from all kinds of people, including a couple of former presidents from different sides of the aisle. President Bill Clinton gave you a review of this book, and he loves it. And you also were fortunate enough to get your good friend, President George H.W. Bush, to read this thing and write you some notes before we lost him. He said, a wonderful book about leadership, and it shows why George Washington and his moral lessons are just as vital today. What a book. You will love it. And I think that's an endorsement that you should be proud of.
Yeah, that's the one that really gets to me. I went to President Bush's funeral. Him and Mrs. Bush were very close to me and my wife, and they had read my thrillers, and I was thrilled that he got to read this book. We got that blurb from him almost a year ago, I think it came in, and one of my favorite moments was getting to share that story of that book with him, and I even got to read the book with him the last time I went to see him just a few weeks ago, right before he passed. The dog-eared book was on his desk, and at that point people were just reading to him, and I got to read the story and read my favorite passages again to him. And it was just one of the most amazing, rewarding, to be sitting and reading about the first president to, at that point, the oldest living president was as humbling a moment as I could get. I will forever owe, that moment. I can't even put it into words, and I find words for a living.
Well, Brad Meltzer's new book, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. Amazon.com, your local bookstore. Ask for it. It is a remarkable book. Michael and I both give it 5 stars. We've been through the whole thing. And 2019 looks to be an exciting year for you. And we know that we're going to have you back here several times to talk about things as they unfold from South Florida and in history. As we go along through this year. Brad, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to our next visit.
Thank you, Reagan. Thank you, Michael. You guys are always part of my family. I really appreciate all you do for Florida.
You're quite welcome, sir. Mike and I back with a brief closing thought following these messages.
For families facing the challenge of a loved one with an opioid use disorder, it's important to know that shallow breathing, snoring, or gurgling sounds and unresponsiveness can be signs of an overdose. In the event of an emergency, an at-home treatment like naloxone can help save a life. To learn more, dial pound 250 on your cell phone and say the key words "save a life." You will have the option to receive a one-time auto-dialed text message from iHeartMedia. Brought to you by the Florida Department of Children and Families. Standard message and data rates apply.
Hey y'all, it's Bubba and Cooter. At Gatorland, there's more gators, more animals, and more fun than ever before.
Visit with our 4 giant white gators and our white gator swamp.
Plus bobcats and Florida Panthers. Not to mention great shows like the world-famous Gator Jumperoo Show.
And don't forget your swim trunks for the Gator Gully Splash Park.
And Florida residents get in for only $14.99 with a valid Florida ID now through the end of December.
For more information, call 407-855-5496 or go to Gatorland.com.
Want to fly somewhere? Looking for cheap flights or cheap tickets? Then call. That's right. Call the low-cost airline travel hotline now for prices so low we can't publish them anywhere. Low Cost Airlines has all kinds of cheap travel deals. Fly domestically and save up to 75%. You can even fly internationally and save even more. Yes, fly anywhere in the world and save a lot of money on your plane tickets. We'll even save you money with cheap travel deals on hotels, rental cars, even complete travel packages. So don't book your tickets until you call us first for the absolute cheapest prices on U.S. and international airline tickets and hotels. Call right now for prices so low they can't be published. Travel experts are here 24/7 to help. 800-754-4531. 800-754-4531. 800-754-4531. That's 800-754-4531.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Employ Florida offers resources and services to help you find employment.
Hi, Gary here. Employ Florida helped me improve my interview skills, plus write a great resume. I attended networking events with many employers and other industry professionals just like me. With the workshops and training found at employflorida.com, I was able to land a great job in my field.
Job resources, real results, hired. Employflorida.com. That's employflorida.com.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And it is always a pleasure to have Florida's own Brad Meltzer on the show with us. And it's an eye-opener. It really is. And you and I have spent a lot of time over the years studying historical things.
Oh, definitely. Especially doing the show.
Yeah, well, there's lots of things in here that I know. I had no idea that 20,000 people witnessed the hanging of one of the perpetrators.
That was quite stunning to learn about, actually.
Yeah.
I can understand why Washington did it. You have to read the book to understand it, but it's an amazing story.
Yeah, and it's one that's not taught in our public schools because it was so close to the Declaration of Independence Day, and my goodness.
This book, I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a page-turner. This book was that.
And every word of it is true.
Yep.
It's just a remarkable, remarkable thing. Well, whenever Brad is here, the clock always runs a little bit too fast on us. And Michael and I have run it out here. But we want to say thank you for your time this day. And we'll invite you to join us 1 week hence for another edition of the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to the Florida Roundtable, a news and public affairs presentation of the Florida News Network. The views and opinions expressed during this show are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's management, ownership, or sponsors. Please email your comments to reagansmith@fnnonline.net.